with him. Hold on, I'm sorry, where did I go? They got married to Susan, who is there at the background. And then their son, Oisin, was born, and they moved to the East Coast. He finished his graduate studies at the University of Maine, spent 5 years as homeless shelter director, and he helped found Morgan Bay Zendo after Walter Norwick resigned. After which, Ruben started going to Morgan Bay Zendo from 1993, I think, to 1996. So Hugh will be talking about, some of the influences in his life, in his Zen journey. Hugh?
Yes, okay, thank you for your introduction. So I just have a very short time, so I'll be brief. And I did start out with Yazatani Roshi. It was in Philadelphia. I'd moved from the Maritimes of Canada down there, and I met there through a man who had spent, the director of our program there, who had spent some years in Japan, introduced me to Yazatani, who conducted retreats at Pendle Hill and a number of other places around New York and Philadelphia. So I attended every one I could, and they were very arduous. They're 7-day retreats. Those who've gone on 7-day retreats know what I mean, that they can be hard on the legs and hard on the back, and I had lower back injuries, so they're very difficult. And then I went to join Philip Kapleau, who was a follower of Yazatani at the time. I was, and had spent some years with him in Japan. So I was with Philip Kapleau for really 7 years, but 5 years as his head monastic. And the first monastic became the head monastic. So then we ended up with 50 monastics. So it was quite or 30, at least 30 monastics. So it was quite a very demanding job for a person in their early 20s at the time. And a lot of really, anybody who's been involved, and some of you may have been in Zen practice in centers or in monasteries, know that it seems like 90% of your time is not in meditation. It's really in overseeing work schedules and doing all the administrative work and in overseeing renovation gangs, all kinds of things going on, volunteers and so on. So then gradually went up to Susan and I got married and had a little boy, and we came eventually to the coast here of Maine, of Surrey, where Ruben and Helen have been visiting. And we became students of, or I did, with Walter Nowick, who was also a musician and had spent 20 years in Japan as in Zen monastery. And then soon after, I think 5 years after, everything goes in 5-year cycles with me, it seems, I joined I began volunteering at a homeless shelter, and the director there was a Sister of Mercy and asked me, after a few years of volunteering, if I would take over as a co-director and director, which I did. It was very challenging. In fact, that's where I really began to understand how to put Zen meditation into practice on a daily life, having to deal with many difficulties and people who needed help. And actually it was very satisfying work. I learned to focus with the mind, what I called put my focus of mind into the heart of everybody, as if I was looking into the sun, their spiritual sun within them. And that became a kind of practice, and also a kind of loving compassion, that metta, so that I was incorporating my practice on a daily basis, often staying overnights and working in that way. It was very much like a monastic life. Even though I was married, I'd come home, but I'd sometimes stay overnight. It was very kind of a monastic sitting practice, because I'd sit as much as I could, even in the early mornings and so on. Then after about 10 years there, 5 years as a person doing the directing and the administrative work there. I began to teach at the University of Maine. I'd been doing part-time studies, and I became a graduate student in religion and literature, and I began teaching then in peace studies, and that was a very, and has been my calling, you could say, for the last 20 years, and I've continued to that. They allowed me to organize my schedule to develop my own courses. So I developed one on Buddhism, the practice of Zen, and in peace studies, combining it to the peace issues around, especially around Buddhism, and also ecology and peace studies in some introductory courses. So I was very fortunate in being able to develop courses that really were attuned to my state of mind and to what I was experiencing. I did have to shift. I was taught with the Yazatani and with Philip Kapleau to focus on the Hara, the Tandon area, and to keep my mind there. And I really found at some point that I had to shift, and that was somewhat difficult to shift consciousness into the wisdom eye, and to try to combine the Hara, the energy, the body energy, with the focus of the mind from a discerning mind. I also asked the Shengyen, Shifu Shengyen, a Chan teacher, to come to our center and give some retreats. And he was very helpful, as well as, of course, Ruben was very helpful as well. But Shengyen helped me to begin to integrate integrate my past as an Irishman and as a living in being raised as a youth and throughout my life, really, with very staunch Catholic, Irish Catholic parents who would pray at night often on their knees doing the rosary, and it's very Gaelic, so it is very kind of intense practice in that curious way that I kind of rebelled from it, but I began integrating that into my life and began to see, as he said, that those that you venerated, grew up venerated, could be your bodhisattvas. So Christ is bodhisattva, Mary is bodhisattva, the saints is bodhisattvas to help. Great bodhisattvas who are helpful. So rather than trying to segment my life, it was an integrating process. And then this kind of sun-centered practice, like a solar sun Buddha, became also a big part of my practice. And I became very involved too in my teaching on animal suffering, and venerating or saving all sentient beings became very integral and a part. And I was invited to go to present a Buddhism and animal suffering at Oxford University a few years ago, and which was a powerful kind of retreat, 3 or 4 days retreat, in a sense of presenting and talking and discussing issues around that. I was the only one there presenting on Buddhism, but many different religious traditions and secular and ethical were being presented. Very, very helpful to me. And then last year I was asked to go to the Global Council for Tolerance and Peace and give another talk, in which I did on Gandhi. So all of these have been very helpful to me. Given the last few minutes, I'll just say that here's a few bullet points of the practices that were helpful to me. And learning to be in the moment, in the presence, pulling myself back into the present moment, learning how to forgive. And much that I had inherited in Ireland was one of not forgiving, but really learning to forgive and let go and be full of great gratitude for life and for my teachers and the teachings around me. To look and see my ancestors and think of them and appreciate them, both spiritual and physical ancestors, and to know all the sacrifices they made for me and for all those around me. To cultivate one-minded concentration without getting my attention diverted. So learning to focus deeply, listen with my body, as Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, listen with the whole body and speak with the whole body. So those were practices that I gradually kind of evolved, were cultivated. I would say they were cultivated and evolved. Becoming to deeply appreciate my teachers, even some who may at the time I thought were very misguided, but even what misguided sometimes, despite that, there was a lot of learning going on. to learn to look at each person, their situation, and just discern the truth. So it was homeless shelter, or whether it was working at the college, university, and dealing with many students, learning to focus and listen for the essence of the issue that they were involved with, whether it was emotional or intellectual or spiritual. And so this was a process of giving back by helping others on the path to help develop. And then with our Zen Center here, to help anyone who came along with our Zen and yoga retreats. And when Ruben had come, of course, it was great help there. So it's very rewarding to be able to help people in many levels, whatever level they're at, or wherever level I'm at, I can help at that level. Though I noted that even I had difficulties with understanding and comprehending Yazatani later on because of his militarism. I had to edit some books and look at them, dealing with issues around that, and it was painful for me to face that. But I think I eventually began to see that other side of Yazatani, that was that he gave himself utterly to his teaching and never talked about that other side of his persona. So I was grateful not to have to face that, except later on in life when I could kind of absorb it and not deal with it. Other things, bullet points I had here, that when glumness, despair enter into the world situation that we all face, I think the Zen practice is being able to reach into that still point and the still heart's core, find solace in this way, renew one's vows to save and free all sentient beings. I think to me is a major vow, and it's one that I recollect on a daily basis. I've come to value chanting a great deal. I've come to value the importance of the Sangha, and I really have come to appreciate the whole feeling of attunement with sound, whether it's in the chanting, even with the birds in the background here in the morning and at the evening, and to hear the bells and the clappers and the sounds of the birds and so on, and to feel the presence of the little beings that are all around us and inside us. And that creates a sense of gratitude and sense of goodwill, and really a sense of enormous peace that comes over me, and feeling the fortunate, how many good fortunes, or how much good fortune has come through in my life as a result of the practice, even though I sometimes regretted and was angry at something or other, somehow worked through it and began and realized that the depth of experience that came out of it was sort of obliterated and let go all the negatives, and the positive came out. So I'll end there because there's much more that could be said, of course, but just to give you a general sense, as Ruben had asked me to give a talk along this line, so I'm very happy to do that. So. Are there any questions? Or do we have time for any questions?
Please start your video. So if anyone would like to ask a question, just click on participants and then click on that blue button that says raise your hand. We will have a few minutes of Q&A, Hugh, if you don't mind, mainly because we will not be meeting this Saturday. So we'll extend this session for a while. And if you need to go, please feel free to do so. Thank you very much for your talk. And there is something that really has stayed in my mind ever since I came to Morgan Bay Zendo. My first session was actually at Morgan Bay Zendo. And I remember Hugh telling us that when Yasutani would do the morning cantan, that he was almost invisible. That's how he was. So my question to you, is really, what was the greatest thing that Yasutani has taught you personally?
Well, he often would repeat this, that actually that whole sense of invisibility that the Zen man, the true Zen man or woman, it becomes invisible, puzzled me a lot, and for years. But I began understanding what he meant, that it was really the ego, that it's the ego, he's saying, is what makes us more visible to others. And when we have kind of neutralized our ego or transformed our ego more into a sense of cultivating our compassion, then we become, in the sense he's talking about, invisible. We don't stand out, and we're not holding on and not trying to be command or be in charge or whatever, more facilitating, I guess.
Thank you. We have John Leroy.
Hi. Thank you for your talk. You covered a lot of ground. Was wondering if you might elaborate just for a bit on the sun practice that you mentioned.
Yes, that became very important to me. Actually, I had been doing some studies, and I was uncentered, and I needed to get myself centered in order to have a better understanding of like what I was studying at the time, Neoplatonism. And it just sort of seemed to come into my mind, the whole sense of the sun, the presence of the sun. So once I concentrated on the sun, I let it go later on, and then I came back to it. I began to reflect on the sun as found that, I'm trying to remember who it was, but a Zen scholar talking about the sun Buddha as the central Buddha. And looking back into my own history of the Celtic world, a lot of solar imagery. And so the way I adapted it is to try to both visualize the sun and to kind of sink into the image so that eventually the image itself disappeared. I felt like I was surrounded by this light. The light just sort of overwhelmed, became a quiet, kind of loving and enclosing light. So it wasn't a sense of worshiping the sun. It was more, the sun was an aid, like a bodhisattva, the sun Buddha, that sort of bathed me. And then I could go deeper into, say, koan practice, or any question that was on my mind. I could become kind of merged into that by way of this suffusing myself and entering into it. So it's not just a metaphor. Some people, oh, it's a nice metaphor. No, there's some great depth in there that it's worth, I think, exploring. And
Katie?
I loved your talk too. And you mentioned something about the little beings around us and inside of us. And I'm just curious about if you could say any more about that.
Well, that's fairly recent. I became fascinated with microbes. I said they're all around us, and they're inside us, and they're all over, and it seems kind of funny to think about it, but when you think your microbes in your stomach alone are several billion of them. And I said, well, why shouldn't I feel grateful to the microbes? They're doing so much hard work down there inside my stomach. And I'm kind of been ignoring them as if that's their job is their job and my job is my job. But I'm very grateful to what they're doing. But I think we're just all surrounded with, as we know now, with viruses and bacteria and so on. Instead of fearing them, is to kind of appreciate the helpful ones and try to not get overcome by the ones that can hurt us badly. But I do think that we do have to feel an appreciation for all living beings, whatever size they are, small or large, microscopic or macroscopic.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We have a few minutes for the last question. Anybody? I guess nobody. So let us prepare for chanting, and please, as I wrote in the chat, please stay after the chanting. So for this evening, instead of doing the normal chants that we do in the evening, I will show a video which was done by Garth Baker Fletcher. And this will be something similar to what I'm planning on, really asking each one of you to submit a video. It'll have a video template on the YouTube, and then you record your own video, and then we will come up with something where all of us are chanting at the same time. So I just would like to use Garth's video for the chanting tonight.
All harmful karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance. Born of my body, mind, and consciousness, now I atone it all.
All right, so that's our chanting for tonight. As you may have noticed, it was actually Garth and myself who were just chanting, but Garth has a musical degree or studying for a PhD in a musical degree, and he has a recording studio wherein he was able to inject different voices, if you listened carefully, into that chant. So thank you, Garth, for doing that. Some announcement, just please bear with me. There will be no sit this coming Saturday, and I've already sent the invitation to register for Sesshin. So if you're planning to come to Sesshin, please go ahead and respond to that. We have a scholarship fund, so we're building, or we have built actually, a scholarship fund based on the last Sesshin that we had. So if you're in financial crisis or hardship, just let us know and we'll be happy to help you. The Sesshin is from July 18th to the 19th. And again, you can attend only one of the 2 days if that's all you can do, or you can come at certain times on both days. again, I would like to ask for volunteers in helping me finalize this chant. You don't have to be a cantor. You can just use your ordinary voice. And then if you write to me, I'll give you instructions on how to do it. For tonight, I'd like to introduce Haley Ferguson, who is here for the first time. Haley, can you just say a few words about yourself? Hello, or whatever you wish.
Hi, I'm Haley, and I found out about the center through Barbara. She's not here tonight, but I'm really enjoying. I came before COVID and sat. This is my first Zoom sit, or actually it's my second, but I didn't do the. So I'm really glad to have this group, and I appreciate all of you. And the talk was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on. We have some more people who are here for the first time. Not first time. I want to acknowledge Wenda. Is Wenda still around? Or has she left? Because Wenda lives in Oklahoma and she's back. Wenda, are you here?
Yes, I'm
Are you?
actually, I'm in Kansas.
Oh, you're in Kansas. Yeah, sorry.
It's good. Yeah, it's good to see you all and to sit with you.
Okay, welcome back.
Thanks.
And then there's somebody, Gary Jr. is still here. Gary Jr. Hi, Gary. Where are you? Okay, he's not answering. And who is iPad? I have a person who didn't identify himself or herself. Who is iPad? Can you please just identify yourself? It says here iPad, but I don't know who you are. Is that Nancy?
Yes, it's my iPad.
All right. Thank you. And then we have Pitts, who is here for the first time. Pitts, can you just introduce yourself? I know you're from Lubbock.
Yes, I'm sitting here in Lubbock in my office and arranged my schedule tonight to be able to come and sit. And I certainly appreciated the talk, and it's good to reconnect with the Sangha. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else I missed? Okay. Well, you all have a happy 4th of July. Ruben and family are still in Santa Fe, and they should be back in Dallas tomorrow night. You, thank you so much. I have one request.
Yes.
Can we ask Susan to introduce herself? I know she's always at the back and very, very
Yes.
quiet.
That's because of our we have a tiny little space.
I can't sit any closer because of the space there.
Yeah, put the light on her so that she can be seen there.
Can you at least, Susan, sit beside Hugh so we can recognize you? You don't mind?
Well, it's kind of
very tight space here.
We have a very tight space.
Okay.
Tight space. It's
Okay.
easy to sit back there. I'm Susan Curran. I live in Surrey, Maine. It's great to be here with you all.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. It's so nice to see you. Susan would lead the morning exercises in Morgan Bay Zendo, and then as soon as I came back to Dallas, I followed your exercises. So that's what we do most of the time. Thanks, Susan. It's good seeing you again. So everybody have happy 4th of July, and thank you very much, Hugh. And
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Ruben is looking forward to listening to your talk. Goodbye.